So in the next couple of months, altcoins may be very quiet, then all of a sudden it may well change. Especially when the volume is snoozing, it's a bit dull in terms of price, then all of a sudden they hit a level, especially when Bitcoin is quiet, and they just pop off. And we've been here before in previous cycles where Bitcoin consolidates and just relaxes and chills, then all of a sudden altcoins just drop and drop and drop until they don't. And then they catch people off guard, and that's where the magic somewhat happens. So hit the like button if you are still here and engage with the world of crypto, and more importantly, leave a comment. What should I look at in my next video? Now I'm going to briefly touch on retail/new sentiment. Now, when the euphoric period happens, it tends to be at the top. Obviously, when it's very, very bearish vibes near the bottom, we're probably going to go into a lull where it gets a bit boring, which, as you can imagine, is either or. Let's be honest with what's going to happen. But realistically, you've got to talk about bullish and bearish comments. You've got to talk about views and stuff like that. Negative element around this move has not played out as we expected. The rotation was very, very small. And more importantly, the retail sentiment didn't really bring new people to the vibe, which is fine. I get it. But ultimately, it's like people are saying that this movie sucks right before it goes viral. And that's the kind of the situation we may well present ourselves with, certainly when we look at the analysis and the data and the information, because this happens quite a lot, and you've probably seen it over the last couple of little mini flourishes that we've had with altcoins. It's when Bitcoin's boring. Now, in my viewpoint, I still look at Bitcoin dominance as a real interesting metric because I don't think it fully knows what it wants to do yet, which is mad in itself, I know. And we'll talk about the Ethereum side of it as well, but more importantly, we've talked about the history before with previous cycles. We'll look at Bitcoin and what it did in the last summer, and then what it gave us in the following winter, which was quite nice actually. But this is a sort of thing that does happen quite a lot. And this calmness before a kind of move will probably allow altcoins to do something. Now, mainly negative first, just going to put that point out there, into something quite big. And as I say, it's happened before. So if we're going to Bitcoin, just to give you an example, right? If we go back in time a little bit, and let's go back to this period here. So this is like when we had that big run. Now, if you recall this area, right, I'm not even going to joke about it. This was a really good alt season in this time period, right? You probably remember it. Now, what happened in the course of the summer was a very much a proper lull. This cycle, not so much a proper lull, but going into August, it really did nothing. And then it did absolutely diddly squat nothing for a long period of time. It was very, very boring. But during that time period, altcoins ramped up a lot and their dominance changed and a lot of things happened. Then with value appreciation of Bitcoin doing very well in this move, altcoins multiplied 2, 3, 4, 5, 10x's in some case, which was ridiculous in a very, very short window. But this is kind of the point I'm making. We then consolidated for a while over the course of that year. And we did something very, very similar in terms of this August sort of time where not a lot happened going into a September. Then we kind of ramped up again. It feels like we may well be doing a carbon copy of certain situations regarding altcoins. And this is just a Bitcoin chart. We always get this kind of meh period. And we may well be going back into this kind of period now, even though we had a bit of a better summer. We could be going in and around this area for a good while, consolidating around this previous all-time high, which may well allow altcoins to breathe a little bit, but not yet squirt to the upside. Because people, in my viewpoint, will miss out on the BTC pairs doing something probably quite good. And then once it does consolidate and stay still, you may well find that it will reprice quite aggressively and you will get that little run to the upside. That's just how it is. And we've seen that before, as I said before, with other assets. And you can look at the likes of HBAR, for example, right? Now, with HBAR, we had that big, massive, aggressive push to the upside with the news. But the realistic element of this was the BTC pair was quite a nice area. And I'm going to show you. It stopped. It literally just stopped. And a time period here of going to these historic levels of all-time lows into news, this is what I mean. There'll be periods where Bitcoin is still and steady and chilled. Then all of a sudden, boom. But as you can imagine, this is just news-based. Everything within that time period went a bit crazy if it followed a certain narrative. And then, realistically, what happened was it allowed a lot of these altcoins from this point to breathe. And it was a mini rotation. It was very, very short. It was very, very sweet. But it was the same situation. Low liquidity, Low interest in Bitcoin, low volume equals a bit of a rush when things move. And again, you can see it here. When this period was going from like September all the way down to these lows, was a total risk on situation. Money was made in that time period, which was quite nice. It was short term, as I say, but it all kind of revolves around one thing. Bitcoin did nothing. It chilled out, it relaxed, and then it pulled back quite aggressively, kind of ruining it all with the tariffs, and then off it goes again. We may well be getting the same situation where we're going to chill out, all coins will bottom, and then something will happen, it will go up, and it will catch people out. The calm before the pressure build, and then more importantly, when it kind of explodes. Which is why I always talk about Ethereum. Sorry, Ethereum lovers and haters and stuff like that, and even Bitcoin lovers and haters, but Ethereum holds the key to the kingdom for all this stuff. And once this stops bleeding in terms of the Ethereum pair, BTC, sorry, the Ethereum slash BTC pair, which I think it has, altcoins will eventually stop bleeding overall. But right now, we'll still get a period where a lot of altcoins are still dropping. It's still in bearish structure. It still looks pretty interesting in terms of potential shorts right now. This is why I say in a couple of months' time, if Bitcoin continues to chill, altcoins may finally bottom somewhere. And then once Bitcoin does something and a bit more meaningful, people might well look at altcoins and go, oh, there's a lot of gaps in liquidity there. I can maybe buy into that, or it goes up even higher. And this isn't just Ethereum based. Obviously, look at Chainlink. Obviously, we hit a bottom here, we pull back up, we may well go back down again. You know, there's a lot of altcoins that have done this sort of move, and even recently, and then coming back down. They still need a bottom in some way, and then they still get these little squirts to the upside. But as I say, there's periods where they do bottom, they find levels of volume, then something does happen, and all of a sudden, boom, bang. Look at the Dogecoin chart, for example. But in terms of all this, in terms of the overall bigger picture, you can see these little shoots to the upside on little periods. There's nothing crazy here. This is a total 2 slash BTC. It's probably been a little bit worse than the other ones because obviously it's a lot more tied to Ethereum here. But the reality is here, when Bitcoin is in a bit of a lull period, you know, we can remember this period as I just covered before was in a bit of a lull period. The end of last year, we had that period where it kind of shot up. You know, Ethereum didn't, but all the other AI narrative elements did, and it was pretty crazy at certain points, but it didn't really give a big push. And likewise here recently, it's happened. But it's all because Bitcoin chilled out for a bit before the pump, right? And it did, which is fine. So we've got to wait for that moment. And I do feel that we're going to go into that lull. We're going to go into a period of a bit of a bit of a mess where it's going to be a bit lullish and a bit boring. And we have had a bit of a move up to the upside, so it will probably cool off. If altcoins then bottom in that time period, it does create a bit of a recipe where if FOMC, for example, do their rate cuts, if altcoin BTC pairs slash USD pairs bottom in terms of that correction, bit of a liquidity, a bit of a move, it's probably going to do a pretty big push to the upside, potentially into a nice Q4. But the age-old question, how big? I don't know. Will we get new all-time highs in altcoins? Probably not in a lot of things, but we'll see. Now, in terms of what I'm doing, I'm going to say one thing, don't FOMO into things because it probably will go a little bit lower before it gets better. I have a firm feeling that we're going to see a bit of a cool off in volume, certainly with ETF stuff as well and institutional investment. But always keep an eye on the dollar cost average. Always keep an eye on potential levels where it could be quite good if you're an altcoin investor. Personally, I'm not buying into altcoins just yet. I do have a small DCA challenge on my Patreon, which is Solana and Bitcoin currently, which is doing pretty well. But for me, fundamental wise, there's no real drive for me to get in until, you know, the retail really come ramping in. I will be trading, but I won't be going investing balls deep into it because there is a cyclical moment where you got to get in and get out before things go really mental. And I don't think we're there yet. But as I say, over the next couple of months, we may well see a change in that. And that might be very interesting for a lot of people because Q4 traditionally is quite good. Always has been, always will be, probably in terms of the financial markets overall, in terms of history in the S&P, the NASDAQ, and all that kind of stuff as well. Not so much just crypto. So yeah, be very mindful of where you put your entries because things can get very interesting. And for me, a quiet setup is my favorite setup because it always meets validations and it always meets opportunity before the headlines catch on, and you've got to wait for that moment to hit. So yeah, be very mindful. By the way, if you're interested in trading, it's open to the UK. There's no KYC. You get 20% back on your fees. as well as other little gubbins that they offer you in terms of welcome bonuses. Blowfin's really, really good at the moment. Highly recommended. But yeah, we do need to keep an eye on stuff like this. I know it's a bit boring for some of you guys, but the BTC ETF has definitely cooled off a little bit. The Ethereum one potentially cooling off as well. So sentiment wise, it may take a bit of time, but we may well drop down to certain levels. I covered it in my Patreon yet in a massive deep dive of like potential areas where we can go on a lot of altcoins. If they hit, it may well be a perfect time to put your orders in. By the way, there's 50% off on Patreon. Jump in. So there we go. If you enjoy this little small ramble that I've done, I know it's not the best video in the world, but watch this video. Might well help you out in certain ways in terms of when I may be selling my crypto.